You are listening to the book, Answering the Call, Making Sense of It and Taking Ownership of the Journey, authored and read by Nadu Denloye. The printed version was released in 2016. To quote the writer of the foreword, this book is about the profound life experiences of a child of God as she seeks to become the best that the Creator intended her to be. The proceeds of the book go towards 6 ministries the Nadu Denloye Trust has been supporting. I'm pleased to say that we have successfully disbursed the 3rd tranche of annual payments to these ministries this year, 2018. With your support, I hope to be able to sustain this giving for as long as I can. I've made this audio recording of the book, read by me, to further encourage your gifts or donation to the Trust. Gifts, donations of any amount will be kindly welcome and can be paid directly to SITL/the Nadu Denloye Trust, Stanbic IBTC Bank, account number 001-698-9514. Please feel free to share this audio recording widely, and thank you so much for your support. Part 2, Chapter 7. Sense of Self. Each man had only one genuine vocation: to find the way to himself. His task was to discover his own destiny, not an arbitrary one, and live it out wholly and resolutely within himself. Everything else was only a would-be existence, an attempt at evasion, a flight back to the ideals of the masses, conformity, and fear of one's own inwardness. Hermann Hesse. Defining moments. As I addressed in part 1, there's an underlying order in the human life course, a sequence of seasons through which our lives must pass. The human life cycle, male and female, evolves through an age-linked sequence of eras: childhood, early adulthood, middle adulthood, late adulthood, and some add late adulthood. Through all of these periods, we struggle through various degrees of self-knowledge and self-invention. It is said that those people who struggle to know themselves and become themselves as children or teenagers continue to explore their own depths, reflect on their own experiences, and test themselves throughout the later stages of life. If you can achieve self-knowledge at an early age, so much the better. Carl Jung, pioneer of analytical psychology, is said to have found that the next opportunity for fundamental change starts at 40, the noon of life. In the midlife transition, which Leveson, a psychologist I referred to in part 1, believes to last from age 40 to 45, the adult faces a crucial point in their development. It is the developmental stage at which one needs to come to terms with the meaning of life, the call to greater wholeness. Much soul-searching and reflecting is done during this phase. The adults question their past life structures and accomplishments and reevaluate their goals. There are very few adults, according to Levinson, that find this midlife stage easy. He or she who dares to find the answers which the soul desires to find invariably goes through a defining moment of change. His or her life literally begins anew, resulting in a drastically different life structure with new goals within it. If we don't get through this stage successfully, it is said that we can become self-absorbed and stagnate. Levinson does state that midlife transition is not the last opportunity for growth and change. He believes there are later transitional periods in late adulthood as well. He states that as long as life continues, no period marks the end of the opportunities and the burdens of further development. I can't articulate a theory to this, but intuitively, I would equate this experience to the quest for self-actualization located at the peak of Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow described this high-level need in the following way: what a man can be, he must be. This need we may call self-actualization. It refers to the desire for self-fulfillment, namely, to the tendency for him to become actualized in what he is potentially. This tendency might be phrased as the desire to become more and more what one is, to become everything that one is capable of becoming. Writing in the context of leadership, Warren Bennis and Robert J. Thomas in an HBR article state that in interviewing more than 40 top leaders in business and the public sector over the past 3 years, we were surprised to find that all of them, young and old, were able to point to intense, often traumatic, always unplanned experiences that had transformed them and had become the sources of their distinctive leadership abilities. For the leaders interviewed, the crucible experience was a trial and a test, a point of deep self-reflection that forced them to question who they were and what mattered to them. It required them to examine their values, question their assumptions, hone their judgment, and invariably, they emerged from the crucible stronger and more sure of themselves and their purpose, changed in some fundamental way. This is also expounded in their book, Gigs and Geezers, where Bennis and Thomas state that of all the truly effective leaders they studied, regardless of age, had undergone at least one intense transformational experience that set them on their desired, even inevitable leadership paths. Their crucible experiences are defining moments that unleash abilities, force crucial choices, and sharpen focus. In essence, they teach a person who he or she is. Whether the crucible was harrowing or not, it is seen by the individual as the turning point that set him or her on the desired, even inevitable course, the authors write. Daniel Goleman et al., in their book, The New Leaders, also referred to sudden, shocking discoveries about our lives shaking us into action, wowing us with a stark truth about ourselves and offering new clarity about our lives. Such startling discoveries can be frightening or enlightening. Some people react by running from them. Some simply deny their power and shrug them off. Others hear the wake-up call, sharpen their resolve, and start to transform self-defeating habits into new strengths. So I was, to all intents and purposes, fairly successful, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with the way I was living. I was in positional leadership, maybe even to some extent level 2 leadership by John Maxwell's definition, one of permission, where people follow because they want to. Business was growing. We were engendering the trust of our staff and customers. I expected to continue to traverse the natural storyline of life, more work, children getting married, grandchildren, retirement, etc., with its nuances and heights and lows. Life seemed okay. I had a supportive husband and mother, so the home front on the face of it was also all taken care of. But then came the aha, as I talked about in the prologue, much like is described in the psychology and leadership materials that I have quoted. My thinking changed, and it set me on a trajectory of self-awareness, change, and growth. The much-referenced Harvard Business Review of December 2001 on breakthrough leadership posits leadership's first commandment as know thyself. And I believe this phase of self-awareness and self-concept was my next step towards leadership. I have therefore tagged the next level up on my leadership model as sense of self. Self-evaluation is the foundation of new perspectives and positive transformation. The key to the renewal of our family, our staff, our businesses, our nation, and indeed our world is our own self-renewal. A growing sense of self. What is necessary to change a person is to change his awareness of himself. Abraham Maslow. The way I viewed myself and the world had changed. So what do you do when you don't know or like the image of yourself that you now see? I had to come to terms with this new reality and examine myself. I needed to answer the question, who am I? I sought to get in touch with who I really was at the center of my being, beyond outward appearances and qualifications. With my awakened consciousness, I began to seek an understanding of my emotions, strengths, weaknesses, needs, and drives. A definite weakness I identified was my inability to let things go. I often harbored repeatedly over the same point like a chicken which keeps scratching on the ground. But I also found I had an inner strength which was at work in me from way back in secondary school. Have you heard the fable about the eagle who behaved like a chicken because he was brought up as a chicken and didn't know any better? The moral of that story is not really what I want to bring out here. It's just that in trying to understand myself, I also found that I had the inner strength of an eagle at play within me, that of steely resolve or grit. I was privileged to have been one of only 2 lower 6 pupils made prefects. To the best of my knowledge, it was the first time ever. Traditionally, prefects were chosen only from the upper 6th class. As a prefect on duty one night, I was required to return the keys to the classrooms to the staff room after locking them up for the night. A teacher had caught me in the staff room looking through class records. As my punishment, I was immediately debadged as a prefect, and this in front of the whole school. I recalled setting my face like a flint and staring everyone down as we filed out of the assembly hall following these shameful incidents. But it had to go beyond my perception of myself. What did others see? At work, I knew I made the young ladies in the office cry occasionally. I must say I was taken aback one day when I caught a mid-level male engineer make a sign of the cross as he entered my office. I guess that's how bad it was. As I learned to seek and accept feedback, and it was no mean feat welcoming the negative views, I got to know that nobody could get anything right around me. I wasn't very nice. I didn't tolerate mistakes and would often raise my voice when I felt someone had made a mistake. Actually, maybe I still do once in a while. And here I was thinking I was teaching those working with me to be diligent, with an eye for detail. Thankfully, it was not all bad. I was considered fair, honest, hardworking, and competent. There was something to learn from me, and for that reason, I had followership. Maybe I was even empathetic sometimes. In May 2006, I benefited from a 360-degree evaluation from a family friend and coach, Mr. Abiola Popola, then recently retired as HR Director of Guinness, Nigeria. I had engaged him to coach our subsidiary business heads as part of our leadership development process, preparatory to my stepping down as Group Managing Director of Telnet. As a result, he had knowledge of how I was assessed by my direct reports. He considered my vulnerabilities as shadows of my strengths. He identified my strengths as having high ethical standards, being disciplined, determined, empathetic, cosmopolitan, sociable, and unafraid to confront challenges. On the downside, he felt there was a danger of my coming across as being superficial, no depth because of the spread, trying to be all things. He considered emotionality as a vulnerability that could arise from stress imposed by the high standards I demanded of myself. He also felt that in demanding excellence in others, I could come across as being insensitive. He observed that onlookers could find it difficult to marry my sociability and cosmopolitan style with my spirituality. I must say that I was not very comfortable with Mr. Popola's feedback about the likelihood of coming across as being superficial. However, I felt that he had done such a good job of profiling the business unit heads that I could not but take his feedback seriously. I surmised that I might have the tendency to come across as if I was pushing myself unnecessarily and stressing myself in the process. I concluded that I complained too much, and I resolved to watch this. I really was enjoying the process of going where I wanted to go and was feeling extremely fulfilled by it. Answering the philosophical question of who I was, as in understanding my purpose, was critical for me, but I was yet to pin that down. But in terms of values, I knew I wanted to uphold the highest level of integrity and to be a good person essentially, morally good, being understanding, compassionate, and considerate of others. observing the golden rule, doing unto others as I would want done to me. The poem Myself by Edgar Albert Guest succinctly captures my ethos for integrity. I have to live with myself, and so I want to be fit for myself to know. I want to be able, as days go by, always to look myself straight in the eye. I don't want to stand with the setting sun and hate myself for the things I have done. I don't want to keep on a closet shelf a lot of secrets about myself and fool myself as I come and go into thinking no one else will ever know the kind of person I really am. I don't want to dress up myself in sham. I want to go out with my head erect. I want to deserve all men's respect. But here in the struggle for fame and wealth, I want to be able to like myself. I don't want to look at myself and know that I am a bluster and bluff and empty show. I never can hide myself from me. I see what others may never see. I know what others may never know. I never can fool myself, and so, whatever happens, I want to be self-respecting and conscience-free. I reached a breakthrough moment when I finally grasped the fact that life is difficult, period. It's not meant to be easy. Life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult. Because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters. This statement by M. Scott Peck from his book, The Road Less Traveled, was an immensely liberating truth for me. Once I wrapped my head around it, it became easier to face challenges, knowing that it's not a matter of if or wishing problems away, but when, and that the very essence of life is about being able to cope with challenges we face as we seek to understand and work out our purpose here on earth. On the business front, I found I personally was swamped in the present, spending too much time managing the present and not enough time creating the future. But thankfully, we had a visionary and the originator and co-founder of the business, Dr. Burian Kiru. He had his eye on the external. I was the doer, and we complemented each other in this way. But I realized I had to gain an understanding of external forces and the trends they could unleash. I have come to the conclusion, though, that we'll never quite know ourselves fully. As Oswald Chambers wrote, personality is the unique, limitless part of our life that makes us distinct from everyone else. It is too vast for us even to comprehend. The part we see may just be the island in the sea that is top of a large mountain. With my awakened consciousness, there are parts to me which to my amazement sometimes surface that I would not have thought existed. For all that others see some parts we ourselves do not see, no one can ever quite get to see the whole of us. We live out our lives in different roles, and everyone gets to see just that part that relates to a particular role. My husband does not know what I do at work. Neither do the people I work with know in any detail how I keep my home, and that transpires across all our relationships. To listen and download this audiobook for free, please go to soundcloud.com or youtube.com and search for Answering the Call.
If you would like to make further inquiries about this audio recording or the ebook or print versions of the book, kindly send an email to answeringthecallaudio@gmail.com.